This unit is on applications of linear equations. This is section 2.3 in your textbook. The essential question for this unit is, what are some of the applications of linear equations and how do you use linear equations to solve word problems? When applying linear equations or trying to understand the applications of linear equations, there are certain objectives that one must understand. The first of these objectives is to be able to translate from words to mathematical expressions. In English, there are various words that are used and that can be translated to mathematical expressions. For example, when we're talking addition, we could use words like sum, more than, plus, added to, increased by. These words all apply to addition. Similarly, for subtraction, we could use less than, less, minus, decreased by, subtracted from. These all relate to subtraction. Then for multiplication, we could have times, multiplied by, of, just the word twice, the product. These all would refer to multiplication. And finally, division. It's a smaller list, but we could use words like quotient, divided by, ratio. These would all refer to division. So one must be able to look at these various words and be able to translate them to mathematical expressions. The second of these objectives is to be able to write equations from given information. Well, we already know how to translate certain words to mathematical expressions. Well, when we're looking at word problems or anything like that, and we see the word is, that's is, we should think in terms of equals or an equation. So is can be translated to equals, and we can have mathematical equations that are equal and which will result in an equation. Now, the third of these objectives I've already sort of touched upon, and that is to be able to distinguish between expressions and equations. Remember, an equation always has an equal sign. An expression does not. So being able to distinguish how words are used to represent either an expression or an equation, that is important. Now, the last of these objectives that I'm going to talk about right now is to use the 6 steps in solving an applied or word problem. So whenever we have a word problem, we need to approach it in a certain specified manner in order to take and effectively solve it. Now, the first of these steps is to read the problem several times if necessary. It is very easy to look at a problem and make assumptions as to what they are asking you and what they are giving you. So make sure you understand totally what they're giving you and what they're asking you. So, step 1, read the problem carefully, several times if necessary. Step 2 is to assign a variable to represent the unknown value. Now, here you can use diagrams, tables, draw a picture, whatever you need to do, but figure out what the unknown is, what they're asking you to find. Write down what that variable represents, and if necessary, express any other unknown values in terms of the variable. Step 3 involves writing an equation using the variable. You've picked a variable for your unknown. Now you need to write an equation using the variable expression or expressions so that you know what you're going to solve. Step 4 is solve the equation, okay? We've read the problem, we understand it, we've assigned a variable to represent the unknown, we've written an equation using that variable. Now we're going to solve that equation for the unknown. Step 5 is state the answer. Now, in this case, you do want to include whatever the units are. If you know what the units are, use them. Okay? Also, you have to ask yourself, is the answer reasonable? Okay? You can tell that fairly easily depending upon the nature of the question. For example, if the question asks, how long does it take to drive from New York City to Los Angeles, and you come out with 2 hours, you know that answer is probably wrong, because it is not reasonable, okay? So make sure that when you come up with your answer, you look at it and you determine, is this answer reasonable? And finally, we come to the sixth and final step, and that is check the answer. Take the answer, go back to the original problem as you read it, and check to see whether or not this answer not only is reasonable, but is correct. Now, there are some things you have to be careful about, some common mistakes that people make. And one of them is that in solving word problems, you forget to answer all the questions asked. You see one question, you solve that, and you forget to go back and realize that there's a second question they're asking you. So make sure you've answered all the questions that have been asked of you. Now I'd like you to go to page 67 in your textbook and answer questions 1 through 5 and post your answers in the Dropbox.